Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. The feds admit they will use the Internet of Things to spy on you. But first, the end is nigh for Europe as officials mull a 2-year Schengen suspension. And we'll take this via Zero Hedge, with Europe at a complete and total loss as to how to deal with the bloc's worst refugee crisis since World War II. Countries have increasingly adopted their own ad hoc solutions, which include razor-wire anti-migrant fences in Hungary and the suspension of Schengen in Austria, where the backlash against asylum seekers is growing more palpable by the day. An ill-fated quota system devised by Berlin and Brussels proved more divisive than it did helpful in the wave of alleged sexual assaults that swept through the region on New Year's Eve, threatening to derail the settlement effort altogether. We have until March, the summer maybe, for a European solution, one unnamed German official told Reuters last month. Then Schengen goes down the drain. There's a big risk that Germany closes, another official has said, suggesting that Angela Merkel may eventually bow to the domestic political pressure and reverse the country's open-door policy. From there, no Schengen. There's a risk that February could start a countdown to the end. Well, sure enough, reports now indicate that European officials are prepared to suspend Schengen for a period of 2 years. The headline from Reuters: EU envoys agree to move step closer to suspending Schengen for 2 years. Now, Zero Hedge wraps up that article by noting, James, that once it's down, it is probably done. Do you agree?
No. I wish I did. Burn, baby, burn is what I want to say. But, I mean, let's put it this way. No one will dance the jig more joyfully upon the grave of the EU once it is in the ground. But it ain't in the ground yet, so let's not hold the funeral quite yet. This is an interesting development, and it is ongoing, and it is influenced by events on the ground, so there is a chance that this could be pushed through. But I think the key part of this article is we have until March, the summer maybe, for a European solution. So I want to see what they're going to pull out of their hat between now and then, and whether this is actually just an upping of the ante. As with so many other things, like the banking crisis or whatever, it's the crisis-opportunity in order to extend the reach. And we know that they've already tabled the plans for their EU-wide new Coast Guard border agency that's going to have more powers than the one that currently exists, Frontex. So we know they're already trying to take more power out of this situation. Maybe there will be a suspension, but I really doubt this is the end of the European project that the globalists have been working on for, 70 years now, at least? So, I'm just skeptical that this is the end. But it is interesting to watch, so we're definitely going to keep our eye on it.
And I would say we've already kind of been keeping an eye on it. We talked about this first, and at the time, Schengen area was new to me, and we discussed that back in November, right here on this very show. And I think all of these other things do lead into sort of the divide and conquer ops that we've been kind of talking about for a long time now. So I had a question posed to me on Twitter today, and I'm going to turn it around and turn it into an impromptu questions for Corbett. Can you be anti-globalization and pro-migration at the same time?
Depends what you mean by the terms. Anti-globalization, I would say I'm anti-globalization in the sense that I am for free voluntary interactions between consenting adult human beings, which means there should be no state of any sort getting in the way of that, or any global governance body like the UN or what have you. But I'm a person of British origin, born in Canada, living in Japan. I clearly don't think that everyone has to stay in their little part of their little town, city, country, county, state, or whatever, and never leave that area. That's ridiculous. No, I'm all for human interaction in all of its beautiful, varied states. I just don't want the state, the governments in the way, and I don't want the UN and bodies like that to try to claim more power over people. So that's the sense in which I'm anti-globalization. I'm not against people interacting with each other. Pro-migration, I don't know who is pro-migration other than governments. I mean, I don't have a position on whether people should or should not move. I think that's, again, it's up to individuals making those choices. So if there's a government quota, you have to bring in, X millions of people or whatever. Yes, that's a statist program and something that a non-statist should be against. So I don't know if I agree with the way that this question is framed, as if there is an anti-globalization in that sense and a pro-migration in that sense position here.
Well, I think that's the thing, and because the question, I think, is framed in somewhat that divide and conquer meme. James, you and I, go through this kind of on camera and off camera, and it feels like at times, if you and I aren't frothing with hatred for groups and pointing blame at, then we're CIA, NSA, disinfo, poser shills, James.
Yeah, right.
That's sort of it's the tough battle. And again, I kind of talk about this where I was at a commercial radio station for 3 years and now sort of come back to alternative media and find it actually, as we've talked about now for several months, very divisive, kind of angry place, almost as though it's being done by design.
I always find it funny that the white nationalists think that a man living in Japan with his Japanese wife and half Japanese son is one of them. I'm not. Newsflash.
A lot of news flashes coming on this 258th episode of New World next week. And again, we'll include the background links to read more about the Shenzhen area and our November 2015 episode where we talked about the disintegration of the European project. Now we move to our second story this week where the feds admit they will use the Internet of Things for spying. We grabbed this via a piece written by a guy named Trevor Timm on The Guardian. If you want evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies aren't losing surveillance abilities because of the rising use of encryption by tech companies, look no further than testimony Tuesday by the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. As The Guardian had reported, Clapper made clear that the Internet of Things, the many devices like thermostats, cameras, and other appliances that are increasingly connected to the Internet, are providing ample opportunity for intelligence agencies to spy on targets and possibly the masses. And it's a danger that many consumers who buy these products may be wholly unaware of. Quote, in the future, intelligence services might use the Internet of Things for identification, surveillance, monitoring, location tracking, and targeting for recruitment, or to gain access to networks or user credentials, end quote, Clapper told a Senate panel as part of his annual assessment of threats against the U.S. I believe in this same point, our Oregon Senator Ron Wyden got some heat out of them when he noted to the head of the CIA that the CIA was spying on the Senate. But we'll leave that aside. Clapper's actually saying something very similar to a major study done at Harvard's Berkman Center, and that study was released last week. It concluded the FBI's recent claim that they are going dark, losing the ability to spy on suspects because of encryption is largely overblown, mainly because federal agencies have so many more avenues for spying. This echoes comments made by many surveillance experts who have made clear that rather than going dark, we are actually in a golden age of surveillance. Privacy advocates have known about the potential for government to exploit the Internet of Things for years. Law enforcement agencies have taken notice, too, increasingly serving court orders on companies for data they keep that citizens might not know that they are transmitting. Police have already been asking Google-owned company Dropcam for footage from cameras inside people's homes meant to keep an eye on their kids, and Fitbit data has already been used in court against defendants multiple times. And then there's the Samsung Spy TV, the Xbox Kinect, Amazon Echo, GM's OnStar, the surveillance Barbie, Elf on the Shelf. And then, of course, the article goes on to note, and I find this interesting how he does note it, James. Then there are the rampant security issues with the Internet of Things that allow hackers, whether they're criminal, government, or something in between, to access loads of data without any court order, like the creeps who are eavesdropping on baby monitors of new parents. Just a few weeks ago, a security researcher found that Google's Nest thermostats were leaking users' zip codes over the Internet. There's even an entire search engine for the Internet of Things called Shodan that allows users to easily search for unsecured webcams that are broadcasting from inside people's houses without their knowledge. While people voluntarily use these devices, the chances are close to zip that they fully understand that a lot of their data is being sent back to various companies to be stored on servers that can either be accessed by governments or hackers. While Clapper's comments are generating new publicity for this privacy worry, the government has known about the potential to exploit these devices for a long time. The then CIA Director David Petraeus made clear that intel agencies would use the Internet of Things to spy on people 4 years ago in 2012, saying, quote, items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, RFID, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters, all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low-cost, and high-power computing. As Wired put it, Petraeus was expressing excitement the CIA would soon be able to spy on you through your dishwasher. So, James, we've pretty much reported on all of those things in the last 7 years of this show. So do we just file this under shocker? The worldwide wiretap is just that.
The Internet of Things is going to spy on you, and in other news, water is wet and the sky is blue. Yep, I mean, this is not particularly surprising or in any way other than what we've expected or reported on in the past, although I did find that statement a bit interesting from Clapper. In the future, intelligence services might use the Internet of Things for identification, surveillance, monitoring, location tracking, okay. And targeting for recruitment. I thought that was really interesting. Like they're going to be spying on your communications or your dishwasher or whatever else, in order to determine if you'd make a good CIA agent? I don't know what that's all about.
I wonder if it more means you could be used as a dupe or as an informant.
Well, there you go. Perfect patsy. Who would make the perfect patsy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's actually a really good point, because if they have an operation and they need someone to be the fall guy and they know everything about you because they have all of your data, wow, that's interesting.
So we'll include some other show notes here, and whether or not this at least seems to be the devil's advocate against the going dark part of the encryption. WGN TV reports the FBI still can't crack the encrypted phone from the San Bernardino shooters. And we'll include a link to Shodan, the search engine for the Internet of Things. I don't know if I would call it an easy-to-use search engine. It starts to go a little bit over my head. I poked around for a couple of minutes. And another related headline, James, in Australia, even learning about encryption will be illegal soon. So we talked a lot about encryption on that aforementioned November 2015 episode of Neural Next Week as well, which I think sets us up pretty well for our third and final story this week. And we stay on the tech note. White hat hacker replaces malware with antivirus. And this comes via the Hacker News. The Dridex banking Trojan, Dridex, D-R-I-D-E-X. It's being widely used by cybercriminals to distribute malware onto users' machines, has now been found distributing a security software. A portion of the Dridex banking Trojan botnet may have been hacked or compromised by an unknown white hat hacker who replaced the malicious links with Avira antivirus installers. Dridex malware, also known as Bugat and Krydex, is believed to have been created by criminals in Eastern Europe in an effort to harvest online banking details. Even after a high-profile takedown operation in late 2015, the Dridex botnet seems to have been active again. So it typically distributes itself through spam messages, emails, malicious attachments, so on and so forth, many Microsoft things. However, the newest development, instead of now distributing this banking Trojan, a portion of the Dridex botnet currently seems to be spreading legitimate copies of the free antivirus software from Avira, and the company even announced it themselves, quote, "The content behind the malware download link has been replaced. It is now providing a legitimate, up-to-date Avira web installer instead. We still don't know who's doing this exactly and why, but we have some theories," said Avira malware expert Moritz Kroll. "This is certainly not something we're doing ourselves. Although the motives behind including the Avira software are still unclear, these kinds of actions are considered to be illegal in many countries," Kroll said from Avira. And James, it is, I think, very much illegal, and we would probably have to file this under not unmitigated good news, maybe?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're not advocating for Trojans to be installing anything on your computer, whether it's legitimate, up-to-date antivirus or not. But at any rate, I mean, it's good to think that there are white hat hackers out there that are counteracting some of the other nonsense that's going on. But to me, the most reassuring part of this entire story is that they are still relying on people opening up attachments in emails from people they don't know as their main way of getting Trojans into your... If that is still their best way of trying to get Trojans onto your computer, I'd say yay, because who is opening attachments in their emails from people they don't know? Newsflash, guys, don't do that. That's the number one thing to take out of this story.
I felt the same way, and as I was kind of reading and researching about them, I even did that double check. I was like, wait, so it's not that I get the email. Oh, it's that I click on the garbage in a garbage email. Yeah, you got to take a lot of steps, and they are probably preying on a lot of people who, perhaps people like in the previous story, you have these devices, but you have no idea how they work and what kind of data they are sending out. So, James, well, that's a very weak good news entry, and well, yeah, not unmitigated good news. But in wrapping all this up, we will mention the latest episode of our spinoff from this show, New World Next Week. We call it Good News Next Week. I put it up just a couple days ago. Parmesan cheese is as good as gold. It's got some France supermarkets banning the wasting of food. It's got an Italian dairy basically using their Parmesan cheese as bank bonds and raised a bunch of money, and crime continues to drop. So those are the kind of good news stories that we're looking for. And I note at the end of that episode, James, that was about all the good news I could find, and that we implore people out there to send good news ideas, either using hashtag Good News Next Week or any other way you can find us out on the web. Our other classic hashtag New World Next Week, some of the headlines: Fed may lack authority for negative interest rates, according to a 2010 memo. And James, that's a follow-up on kind of our big story on the previous episode of New World Next Week. Microsoft drops a cloud data center under the ocean. Obama quietly unveils a $4.1 trillion budget with more for big pharma, big military, and the coming cyber war. And while Americans prepped for the Super Bowl, the powers that shouldn't be signed the TTP, and the TTIP is coming up next. Both of those last stories, James, I covered last Monday on The Morning Monarchy, which I hope people will check out and make part of their day. That's my last deprogramming note. James, are you going to be involved on the big NewsBud launch coming up this Sunday, Valentine's Day?
Yes, I am. And yes, it's Sunday, February 14th. I don't know the details of the exact time on this yet, but there's going to be a live YouTube stream or hangout of some sort that's going on, and I will be involved in some way at some point during the day. So I can't give you any more details because I don't think they're hammered out yet. But if you're on the NewsBud email update list, you will find they will obviously send information about it. So if you're not on that email update list yet, I will put the link in the show notes for this conversation so you guys can sign up.
Awesome. Well, and like everything that we say and cite, it'll always be down in the show notes for these episodes. James, I appreciate it once again.
Thank you.